Welcome to Business Beyond Borders, the go-to podcast for CPA firms seeking transformative insights. I'm your host, Laurence Whittam, and with each episode we'll uncover key insights, best practices, and invaluable resources tailored for CPAs. From trending strategies to diving deep into outsourcing and offshoring, our experts will help in all areas of your business. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Business Beyond Borders. So I have a very special guest today, Randy Crabtree, who, again, I feel like we've bumped into each other a fair few times just in the past month, right? So I know you're on the conference game, not just within your own, but a lot of prep for that as well, bridging the gap coming up. But I know you've been traveling just a little bit as well, just like myself. I've had 1 week now to settle a little bit, and then before I go back to the West Coast. For some reason, I seem to have planned every single West Coast conference this year, rather than like any types of East Coast ones. Quite a lot of travel in the past couple of months. But I know you don't need too much of an intro. I know you've again, a lot of people in the profession know you. I know you're speaking quite a lot this year. And again, I think there's a congratulations in order. You were another top influencer in the space this year as well, I believe. Is that right?
It is. The last 2 years, pretty lucky to get recognition like that.
Very cool. Very cool. So do you want to give just a quick background anyway, so that everybody who doesn't know you gets to know who you are?
Well, I'm a CPA. I started Tri-Merit. It's a specialty tax professional firm a few years back, 18 years ago to be exact. Before that, I was managing partner of a generalist firm for 16 years. Which means I'm old. I've been around the profession for a while, but the last, I don't even know what it's been, handful of years for sure. I've just got this passion about trying to help this profession in any way I possibly can. It's given me so much. I want to see what I can give back, and mental health awareness, the power of leading with vulnerability, culture, any aspect of the profession, I think, and really just to get us to change our mindset, to look at things different. So started a podcast 5 years ago, Unique CPA, where we talk a lot about that. But you mentioned bridging the gap. Man, that's been so rewarding and so much fun. And just to see that people are getting so much out of that conference has been a lot of really makes me feel good, which is nice.
Good. I don't know. You said that when we saw each other in San Diego, you were like, again, that's a bit of a passion project, and the stuff you do is really just about stuff you enjoy now. And you mentioned old. I won't say old. I'll say experienced. Right? is the word, right? But now, and we're going to talk a little bit more today about like the culture side, right? And again, I think there's a lot of things that surround that when it comes to the profession. It's obviously a big challenge. I think a lot more firms are thinking about culture now more intentionally, right? And I believe you shared that. But for the profession, I think it's quite a hard shift, right? It's a big change of what we have to do internally. And that stems from the leadership making a very intentional change in the culture for a firm and having a set culture, right? And also down to making sure just in general, your staff fit that culture as well, right? So can you maybe just share a little bit about your experience when it comes to that, like what you see in firms? And I'll chime in a little bit because, again, I've been doing a project with the Cal CPA right now where they're trying to look through different firms, and culture is one of those big aspects they're trying to award to one of the firms in California to say like, yeah, this is a firm that's clearly showing that they are acting on building a good culture, right? So there's been a few interesting interviews I've had recently, but tell us what you're seeing on that culture side. What are firms doing?
Yeah, so I think people finally realize that. So we're a profession of, Sally, same as last year. Let's just keep going. Consistency is important to us, and I know that. But the mindset for us kind of gets stuck on that. Oh, we've done it this way forever. Let's keep doing it this way. We're making really good money. Oh, sure, we might be burnt out, but don't worry about that. We're making money, and let's just concentrate on that. And so what I've seen a shift. I've seen a change. I've seen people realize, especially with the issue of attracting and retaining people, that people have to be the key of everything we do. And I think we've ignored that in the past. I think it's always been client first. And I think we've seen this change to people first, and how important the people are in trying to make sure that they feel rewarded and feel part of something meaningful. That's an important part of it. Part of something meaningful, part of something that they're having an impact with. And so I think if we just start changing that mindset of looking at things differently, making sure that we celebrate wins within the people, whether it's in business or it's in personal life. My wife and I just adopted a dog from a rescue, and people were celebrating that within our company. We just had probably 6 births within our organization in the last 6 months. And that we highlight as much as anything else of what's going on. So if you don't want me to go on forever, I will say one of the biggest things you can do is celebrate the people, put people first. If you put people first, the clients are serviced better than they ever were before. And so we can talk an hour on that, but I'll let you decide if we're going further into that side of things.
Yeah, I mean, so, and I'll give one example, actually, and again, a very unique from approach that I've heard recently. Like they said, goal-wise, like they sat down as a partner group, and they really sit down every year, and they have this retreat where they do it, and they actually do the retreat in Honduras. Right. Oh, and they said the reason why I think there was a personal connection initially for doing it, but now they really do a mission trip as their part of their retreat. Right. Mm-hmm. And they were like, It just brings everybody to the same level. Right. They have experiences where, like, I think the previous managing partner, they said, got stuck in some mud and literally had to be dragged out by a couple of the bigger staff members that were able to do so and were younger. And it was like, but it gives everyone a unique experience where it's giving back, and they're just very built on it. That's their culture. And they were like, we know we're growing, but we don't want to focus on the growth. We focus on the people side of it. We're doing this. And that's how they've decided that's the culture that they want. Right. And they have a very intentional way of doing it, and they show how they're doing it, and they make sure that everybody is involved. So I think it's needed to be, from a leadership side of it, we need to focus on the intention, right?
Oh, you're 100% right. Intentionality is one of my key leadership traits there, because you can't just assume things are going to happen. You can allow culture to start to cultivate in one aspect of an organization, but then if you see this positive culture being cultivated, you have to intentionally foster that, intentionally give people ways to have this blossom within the whole organization. And I have examples where that hasn't happened, where it started in one area and another area has their own culture, and you just can't have a cohesive unit that's going to be successful if you have separate cultures within an organization. And I know you probably have questions, but let me expand on some of the things you said, because this is, I think what you said is so important. One is getting together in person. We're an 80-person firm. We're pretty much virtual. We have a couple offices, but nobody's required to go there. And you can create a culture in a remote environment, but you need that really strengthens when you're in person. So twice a year, we make sure we do, like you said, the retreats. Twice a year, we get together as an organization, and just seeing people in person, hugging, laughing, sharing, crying, even arguing. That happened at this last one. But those arguments aren't like mean. It's like, hey, this is where, this is what we see. This is the things that are going on. That is so important. And the reason I know that, I just know it in my heart, that you need to see people in person. That's one reason you and I are at so many conferences, probably to meet people. But in 2024, we skipped our in-person events and did them virtually. I felt the impact of that. Felt the culture, our culture. I'll put our culture up against anybody. And it's not a competition. I'll put our culture up here with anybody. And I felt it come here. And when we had the first day of that meeting, you felt it. There was uncertainty. People weren't sure. When you don't have that intentionality and the transparency, which I thought was there, but if you're not in person, you don't have it. People started making up things in their own mind. Oh, we didn't have this because of this. Oh, this is what's happening. And that all came out when we got together in person. And by the end of that 2.5 days, that culture was back to the level that I expected. So the getting together, the retreats, the in-person is important, but the flexibility of working when you want, where you want is something that at least, maybe the boomers that are my age don't want as much. I do, but the next generation is expecting that. And if you don't do that, the culture is just not going to be a place where people want to be part of.
So, and like, from my side, like, I'm very involved whenever it comes to outsourcing, right? And offshoring and all this, right? So, and what comes to mind is, again, we had a big shift around sort of the COVID time where, again, a lot of firms now got the experience of remote work, right? And you just mentioned that, right? And this is where, okay, we started to learn how to manage and sort of build the firms in a somewhat of a remote environment, right? And I think that's where then leaders now, though, they are shifting again back to, okay, we do need a mixed bag. We need people in the office occasionally, right? We want that in-person piece, right? And this is where like, how should firms do that, right? I mean, now it's because there's a different need from different people, right? But it's that in person is needed at some point, right? And I think there's different ways we can take it and different ways we can actually implement in-person activities, right? So what do you advise some firms to do in that?
And honestly, obviously, there's a lot of variables there. You know, if you're a larger organization, you're multiple locations like we are, what we do is we actually promote the remote part of it. People love that. But we have a bunch of people in Houston. We have a bunch of people in Detroit area. We have a bunch of people in the West Coast. And so what we do is we try to promote them getting together at times. And so even if it's not in the office, it's a, hey, let's go out for pizza and beer night. It is here in Chicago suburbs where our main office is. We have a group of people that does like once a week want to go into the office together. And so we promote that. But what we also want to do is we want to support that from a intentionality, going back to intentionality. Hey, if you all wanted to create some outing for your local group, obviously we're going to support that financially as well as, we just support you doing that. And that is important. Now, if you're smaller and you have one location, or not small, but you have one location, obviously you can have 10,000 people and have one location. Then it's just a matter of still giving the flexibility. I think if you here's what my concern is. If you say, hey, you have to be in 3 days a week, that just is a negative thing because people want the flexibility. And so I think if you just leave it open that, hey, when you want to come in, if there's a certain time or we're doing this thing this day, come in, giving people the flexibility because they want to make those decisions themselves. But when you and I wasn't in San Diego? I was at another conference after that. Actually, it was AICP Engage in Vegas. And I was doing a presentation on burnout. And I was talking to younger people. I don't think it was Gen Z, but maybe millennial. Maybe it was Gen Z. And they were talking about how for them it is important to be in the office. And I think everybody's different. And so they were kind of pushing back like, hey, we do want this ability to go in the office. We want that. And so you just get to feel out the people and try to mold things to each individual. If you mandate certain things, I just think that's where, you're going to get a rebellion because people don't want that. They want to feel like they're in charge of their future.
And I think one of the questions that came up with the smaller firm is, again, a bit more unique that I saw. And they even, again, another unique thing they did, which I was like, this is really out there. Like, they just removed titles entirely, right? And I was like, okay, that's about, obviously everybody internally knows rough titles, but like, it's like they've removed titles. And I was like, well, I don't know many firms at all that have done that. And that's, now how do you even and again, this is where the question comes up of like, so how do you build even career development? And again, going back to what you said, some people want to be in the office because they want access to partners. They want access to they want to be able to see a path and what that could look like. And it's a lot more difficult remotely, in my opinion, to do that, right? Unless you, again, are very intentional around doing it and create these career paths. So maybe stemming a bit more towards that now with the culture side is how should firms sort of create those career paths in more of a remote environment, right? And what can that look like?
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. One is I've seen organizations that basically, whether it's intentional or subconsciously, promote the people who are in office and ignore the people who are remote. It's just, you can see this, and the people I've talked to have seen this, and I know I can name multiple ones right away. And so you have to make sure that the career paths are defined not based on where you're working, but based on what you're doing. And what you said with career paths is so important. I think you know this, but I do a survey. Actually, I was going to say yearly, Year 2 is coming out. So now I can say yearly. We have year 2 live
Cool.
right now, but it's the Accountant's Professional Satisfaction Survey. And one of the key things in there was when there was well-defined career paths, satisfaction levels went through the roof. What we found, though, is if you weren't on the partner path, it was very common that the career paths weren't defined that well. You just didn't know what was. And so, man, we're gonna call this session, this podcast, the intentionality podcast, I think, because you have to have it be intentional again about defining these career paths and not being biased against who's in the office and who's not, and make sure that this fits into wherever somebody's working. But the career paths defined for partner level seem to be really good across the board. The career paths when you don't want to be partner or you don't see yourself as a partner, that's where we have issues. That's where we found really low satisfaction, not because the career path, but because of the lack of definition of the career path that just wasn't there. And so again, intentionality about that is important.
And again, some people don't want to be a partner, right? Some people maybe see it, and some people also like, and this is where I think the technical route, like we had a big challenge with the outsourcing firm I was with previously, not everybody wants to be a manager and manage people. Some people aren't good at that, right? And they want just a purely technical role, but you still need to be able to, again, reward those people and create a career path for them. Otherwise you will end up losing the highly skilled, highly technical people as well, right? Because they don't necessarily want to be bogged down by people problems, right? They want to just focus on the work, right? But also keep improving, right? And have more technical training and maybe be experienced with different types of projects and things like that. Whereas, so you're saying that a lot of firms maybe have struggled to create that path in that same way as they would like the traditional partner path.
Yeah, it's not happening. What you just said is I see all the time. Who do we promote to the manager level? It's the best technician. Or if it's business development, it's the person who generates the most business. Well, that doesn't mean they want to manage people. That doesn't mean that that's their role. And so that's why we have to get to know the people we work with more on a personal level than just what they do and what their outcome is because if we get to know, if I get to know somebody and I realize, man, this is the greatest technician in the world, but I get to know them personally and they're, whatever, they're quiet, they're shy, they like to stay to themselves, they thrive on just being in the books or whatever, you're going to realize that that's probably not their role to manage, but you want to make sure that they have a decision in what's next for them. Hey, you're great at what you're doing here. Where do you see yourself going? What is your goals within this organization? Just having open conversations with people to find out what they want rather than just assuming that the next level is manager for them or supervisor or whatever is not where we need to be. We need to really find out what they really want and then decide together what the next step in their career is.
Now, and one of the things that I talk to some of the firms about when we're looking at outsourcing and offshoring, and again, a lot of the cultural side of it comes up where not to, again, stereotype too much, but again, stereotypes are there for a reason, right? At the end of the day, to some extent, right? And again, a lot of offshore tends not to want to speak up, right? Or tends not to want to talk up in a group setting, right? So I really try and push the firm to, again, have a lot more one-on-ones, right? To be able to understand more about that individual, to make them feel more comfortable, to make them feel more open in asking questions and those types of environments. So, but you see it also internally where, again, there are some of these more technical candidates and team members that, again, they also aren't going to ever speak up in a meeting necessarily, right? But we, again, need to be more intentional to have these one-on-ones to make sure that these individuals have a clear career path, but you can then, again, you'll get to know them one-on-one and they'll actually end up opening up a lot more generally than necessarily in that group setting.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree with that completely. And that comes down, this is my new buzzword of the year is vulnerable leadership. Because if you, as the leader, and I don't know, I have a mental block with the word leader. I don't know why, but if you assume whatever your definition of leader is, you're a leader in the organization. If you're vulnerable and open to say, hey, I made a mistake, or hey, I don't have the answer, I need your help, or hey, we need to figure this out together. I can't do it. I don't know. if you will say this, well, then everybody else is going to feel more comfortable. You're putting that out there that this is okay. Even with the mistakes aspect of things, that I think is one of the most important things. I think if you're afraid to make a mistake or admit that you made a mistake, nobody's ever going to talk up about that. And if you don't do that, how are you going to be innovative or creative? Because everybody's going to be afraid to try something new. In any organization, that's what you need. So vulnerability, I think, opens people up because they see you as the leader is not just this figurehead up here. You are somebody that's willing to say you don't know everything. I think when you do that, people open up. And to go one step further, what you were saying, especially in like an outsourcing, my assistant is in Mexico. And so she and I talk multiple times a week. Obviously, she keeps me organized. I am not organized, but she is. And so it looks like sometimes I might be organized, but we talk about what she wants. We talk about what her goals are. We just had the company that we use for her. They had this whole list of things, how she's doing, what she need to improve. What does she want to go do in the future? And we just talked, and rather than me deciding that, we talked about that together. Where do you want to go? What are you comfortable with this? Do you want something else? Because anything you want, we'll try to work into what you're doing. And, we got to it and she says, I'm really happy doing exactly what I'm doing. Now, she adds stuff all the time that I don't even think about, but I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. And so I was like, well, why try to find new things for her when she's at a point where she loves what she's doing already? So ask the person. That's the key thing.
Yeah, don't take that one size fits all approach to it, right? Everybody's an individual. So now, and going towards that, actually, it sort of leads in pretty well towards that. How, as a leader, right, how do we look at, again, culture being a big part in it? We want to retain talent, right? We want to make sure that we're doing the best thing to keep everyone. How do we keep people productive in that same way as well? Because I think what's come up is like people will give like as much flexibility as possible as well, right? I mean, there was a big talk of, hey, unlimited time off, right? And then like all these different things. But how do we keep people productive, right? And having a control thing, do we need to have flexible expectations of individuals as well? Do we need to, like, I've heard, I can't remember the gentleman's name. I think he actually spoke at Bridging the Gap last year, but he does a cool thing in his office where he says, listen, you've got 3 tiers, right? We need you to be at a minimum, just here, right? And this is not a low performance. This is your average performance. If you want to move up and keep moving up, you can be a high performer. And listen, we're going to credit you for being a high performer. We're going to give you a bonus based on that, but we don't expect you to be a high performer all the time, right? And if you fall into the low performer range, so he has like 3 tiers, again, it's not a terrible thing, but we need to know why, right? Is it that something's going on in your personal life? This is for us to see that, oh, you're always performing average, like a good performance, but now you dropped, right? Is there something going on, right? It's a good way to sort of like figure it out, but like, how do we as leaders make sure that everyone's still productive as well from a business side?
Yes. One thing we do as an organization, and this happened 8 years ago, where we really, I think vulnerability played into it, was allow people to align what they're doing with what they love. And it's funny. If you're a 5-person organization, you can do this. It's not as easy. If you're a 50-person organization, you can do this. And so, I have a little Excel spreadsheet I got from a friend of mine, Sean Duncan, which is 5 columns, all the things you work on. Do you love it or you hate it? Check one of those. Are you good at it or are you bad at it? Check out one of those. And this is where vulnerability comes in. Because if leaders don't do this, nobody else is going to want to say, I'm bad at something. No one else is going to say something, I don't like something. But if you go through this list and you find, if somebody's probably a lower performer because they're just not enjoying what they're doing. They don't enjoy the responsibilities. They don't have a wide variety of responsibilities, which we found creates satisfaction in the profession in our survey, or there's just not the client base they want to work on. You look at all those things, and if you're open to say, hey, tell us what you love doing and tell us what you're good at, conversely, tell us what you don't like doing and tell us what you're bad at, that's where you have to have this trust level, because people aren't going to want to do it unless there's this trust level. And you can start aligning people with their loves and their goods. I'm good at it. I love it. That right there is going to increase performance. That right there is going to create high performers, because if I live at the intersection of my passion, my skill, and if everybody can live at that intersection, man, you cannot be stopped. And so I want everybody to get there. It's not an immediate thing, but if you can slowly start adjusting what you're working on, who you're working with, what you're doing, it's going to help performance.
Very cool. Very cool. So, and I've realized that I clearly packed in too many loaded questions where we could go on for hours, I think. So as you mentioned at the beginning, so we'll sort out there. So what I think we'll do, we need to wrap up, but I really appreciate you jumping on. I think that it's again, if you don't know Randy, again, I know you're on a lot of podcasts, you're speaking, you're around at a lot of the conferences. You want to do a quick drop of Bridging the Gap, just so everybody knows, because this will be released before then anyway. Just in case anybody wants to attend.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So Bridging the Gap conference is year 3. It was a brainchild I had about 5 or 6 years ago, and it came to fruition through our marketing department, which are awesome. We will be July 22nd, 23rd, and 24th in Denver this year. And it is not I guess we use the hashtag, not your average accounting conference or something like that. It is, we talk about culture. We talk about mental health awareness. We talk about vulnerability. We talk about these things that I think are going to move the profession forward. And we're very fortunate that we've got a really strong, passionate group that comes to the conference. So if you're interested, btgconference.com is where you can get more information.
Very cool. Randy, really, really appreciate you jumping on today. Everybody, I hope you've enjoyed the episode today, and highly recommend doing a quick search for Randy Crabtree, right, and going and looking at some of the other podcasts where he's dug a bit deeper as well into the culture side. And again, hope to see you on the next episode of Business Beyond Borders. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Business Beyond Borders. I'm Laurence Whittam, and it's been a pleasure bringing you impactful insights tailored for the modern CPA firm. Remember, the world of accounting is vast and ever evolving, and we're here to navigate it together. For more resources and episodes, don't forget to subscribe and reach out to our experts. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of your business and explore the limitless possibilities beyond borders.